90% of the golf lessons that are given could be summed up into 3 basic concepts. How you set up to the golf ball, understanding how to control the club face, and understanding how to pivot. If you know these 3 things, you're going to cover the vast majority of golf lessons that you're going to get. I'm PGA teaching professional Todd Kolb, Director of Instruction for US Golf TV. In over 25 years, I have literally given thousands and thousands of lessons, and my guess is if you're watching this video, you've taken your fair share of lessons also. And you know what? Today we're talking about the 3 concepts that if you understand these, you're going to start playing better golf. Now, hey, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Do me a favor, subscribe and tell your friends about us here at US Golf TV. I really feel like we're doing some great stuff and helping our fellow golfers play some great golf out there. So be sure to subscribe, and always be sure to leave a comment. I literally respond to every single one of them because I love hearing from you, because I can maybe learn some stuff from you. So let's dive right into this. We're going to talk about the setup, we're going to talk about the club face control, and we're going to talk about the pivot. So first of all, how we set up to the golf ball starts with how we grip the golf club. So the first thing I want you to know is I'm going to demonstrate this from a right-handed golfer's perspective, and I've just got my 7-iron. You could learn the grip with any club, but for today's purposes, I'm using my 7-iron. First tip I want to give you is that when you place your hands on the club, bring the club up here at eye level. So notice when I'm holding the club, I'm holding it in my trail hand, my right hand. I've got it up here at eye level, but also notice the angle that I have the club at. Now the reason this angle is, I'd say it's maybe 45 degrees. Okay, if this was 0 and this was 90, maybe it's halfway in between. The reason this is important because it places my hand in the accurate position, the correct position I should say, so that the club kind of runs diagonal. Notice how it's running diagonal. It's exiting right here through the middle of my index finger, and it's resting on the top of my, or the pad is resting on the top of the hand like so. So when the club is angled at this position, that angles the club to run through the hand in the way that you want it to. Now, I'm also going to make sure that my lead thumb is nice and snug, and it's actually what I call a little bit short. So this would be extended, and this would be a little bit shorter. So first tip is get the club up here at eye level, put it at a 45-degree angle. Just take your hand and angle it like so. Right? The visual there will tell you what you need, and then go ahead and close it around. Now, the trail hand, the right hand, basically works the same way. From this angle, I'm going to go ahead also, and I'm going to feel like I'm going to hold it a little bit more, maybe down to my fingers of my trail hand like so. All right, and my trail hand, my right hand, is going to cover my lead thumb. Okay, now underneath there, you've got a couple different things you can do. You can overlap it like so. You can interlock it. Both of those work quite well. It's kind of up to you. Or for some younger golfers, or maybe even some female golfers at times, they like to use a 10-finger grip. Either one of those works. So the first tip is on the grip. Get the club up here at eye level. Get it at that 45-degree angle. That's going to help you out quite a bit. Now, the next thing I want to talk about here is the setup position. Here's what you got to know in the setup position. All right, basically you want to be in a ready position. So from down the line, I've got my feet about shoulder width apart. I've got my toes flared out just slightly. I've got a little bit of a knee bend and a little bit of tilt at the hip. All right, this gets me in a position so that I can swing the golf club and be athletic. Now, a good checkpoint for you is pretty simple. When you're set in here, your hands, your fingertips, I should say, should just barely touch or just be outside your kneecap. So notice how my hands are falling right here. This tells me that I've got pretty good bend in my knees and also in my hips, and can also help me get the proper distance away from the golf ball. So getting set up correctly, it's not an overcomplicated thing as long as you understand those couple concepts. Toes are flared out a little bit of knee bend, a little bit of hip bend, so that your fingertips will just touch the front of your kneecaps. Now, 2 other things I want to tell you on the setup that I strongly believe in and has really helped a lot of my students. Number 1 is when you're set up, feel like to start, you've got a little bit more weight or pressure on your lead foot. I'm going to talk about why that's important in a second. Okay, and number 2 is feel like your upper body is tilted back just a little bit. So notice how the buttons here, or the zipper on my shirt here, tilts a little bit away from the target, and I've got a little bit of weight forward. When I can do those couple things, that's going to help me get in the position that I want to get in for the setup. Now, why is it important to have a little bit of weight on the lead foot? Well, here's why. Because the weight on the lead foot allows you to, what I call, unweight and move into your trail side. So if I've got, let's say, 60% of my weight here, and I move that 60% to my trail foot, so now my trail foot's got maybe 80%, That movement from 60 to 80 is what I like to call the unweighting, or it's kind of the trigger to get your golf swing going. If you start with all your weight on your trail foot, you don't have that little bit of bump or that little bit of movement to kind of initiate the movement of the golf swing. So those are the couple of tips that you want. If you know those basic concepts, you're going to be set up in a pretty good position to hit a good golf shot. So the next thing we want to talk about is controlling the club face, because the club face, combined with a couple other things, has the biggest impact on the direction the golf ball starts and the curve of the golf ball. All right, so this is pretty simple. This is a great tip that I picked up a few years ago. You're just going to take a golf tee, and what you're going to do is, I got my FootJoy glove on here, I'm just going to put this tee right kind of in the opening right there. So notice how it's just kind of sticking out like so. Now I can use this as a reference point. So when I'm set up, I'm in this good position right here. All right, and the tee right now is pointed towards the target. So from the front on view right here, all right, notice how the tee is pointing towards the target. Okay, now when I return to impact, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to return to that same spot. Notice how the tee is pointing at the target? That tells me that my club face is square. If the tee was pointing towards the sky, club face open, I'll go ahead and do it up here. Tee to the sky, club face open. Tee at the target, square. Tee to the ground, closed. All right, so though if you understand those concepts, we can use that feel throughout the golf swing. So I'm set up here, tee's pointing at the target. When I take it away, the tee now is pointing kind of down where the ball would be. Now I know my club face is square. And when I swing it to the top, the tee is going to point more towards the sky. And when I come back down, I'm going to get that tee pointing at the target. So this simple drill and referencing the tee can really help you understand how you can control the club face. Most amateur golfers I see, if you slice the golf ball, this is for you. When they're set up, probably a pretty good position they're set up, but when they take the club away, they rotate the club this way, which opens it up. Notice that the tee points towards the sky. Bad position to be in if you're a slicer of the golf ball. Or maybe they're good here, but when they get to the top, the tee's not pointing towards the sky, it's pointed over there at my golf bag, which gets the club face open as well. So if you're at home and you want to work on your club face control, what you're going to simply do, take the tee, it's pointing at the target, down towards the ball, towards the sky, and then back towards the target. And that movement through there will help you understand how you can control the club face. So that's the second tip. The second lesson, we've covered setup, we've covered club face control. Let's talk about the pivot. The pivot is, people talk about balance, swinging under control, having good rhythm, these types of things you hear a lot of. So what is the pivot in the golf swing? Well, the pivot we touched on a little bit already when we talked about having our weight a little forward, pushing towards the trail side and rotating. But your pivot is basically how you interact with the ground. Okay, so if you're falling over or you're out of balance when you're swinging the club, or you're out on your toes, you're moving around a lot, you are not pivoting correctly. So in a good pivot, what we want to see is we want to see starting a little left, which we've talked about, okay, early in the backswing. Now, I'm going to give you a drill to just practice this so it becomes pretty natural in a second here. But you start a little left, you bump towards the right, see the little bump? Okay, so it's a bump and then it's a turn. All right, so you start here, little lead side, little left side, bump to the trail side, and then we turn. So my weight goes from my left foot to my right foot and then back towards my heel. So from down the line, start a little left, bump right, turn towards the heel. Okay, now in the downswing, I'm going to kind of basically reverse that. So I'm on my right foot. Now I'm going to work back towards my lead foot. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish with my knees touching. So we're moving from front side to trail side, back to front side, and finishing with all my weight on my lead side. So how do we practice that? How do we do that? Well, here's a couple great drills. The first one is very simple. It helps us understand staying relatively centered when we rotate. And that's just hitting balls with my feet together. So I take my setup, put my feet together, and just go ahead and swing my arms. Now when I do this, if I have too much movement towards toes or heels, you're going to feel that right away. So feet together, and just feeling my arms swing. Now the side benefit to that is there's a lot of speed in the arms. Okay? Don't be afraid to use your arms in your swing, especially senior golfers. You use your arms, there's a lot of speed there. So that would be drill number one. Drill number two is a little bit of a modification of that. So take your regular setup, take your lead foot, bring it back to your trail foot, okay? Backswing, and then step forward and strike the ball. So let me go ahead and demonstrate. Regular setup, lead foot back, backswing, and step forward. Now when I do that, what I'm doing there is I'm learning to transfer my weight from my trail foot to my lead foot. So when we talk about the pivot, we're talking about swinging the club and being in balance. I start left, I go right, I go back to the left. These couple drills can help us do that. So the truth of the matter is that 90% of the golf lessons you take are either about your setup, they're about your club face, or they're about your pivot. And by understanding these three basic concepts and ways to practice them, you're only going to need one lesson, and hopefully it's just this lesson. So I hope those tips help you out. Next time you head to the golf course, you get some good understanding of what you want to do, and more importantly, you can start playing some better golf.